Welcome to another episode of 1MDX. This is now our third episode. I'm pleased to be joined today by Jack Lancaster, Chief Executive Officer of Evolution Surgical, one of Australia's fastest growing spine distributors. They've managed to carve out a space in a really competitive market such as spine. Their reputation for innovation, surgeon partnerships and service is second to none. I'm really interested to sit down today to find out from Jack how they've been able to scale so effectively over the last few years, how they're managing to build and develop high-performing teams, and ultimately what the future looks like for Evolution Surgical here within Australia, but then also what the future looks like for the spine space here as well within Australia and New Zealand and possibly beyond. Jack, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Spaking the time to come and join us today. You've got a really interesting story, Jack, and before we go into Evolution Surgical, I'm really interested to share with our viewers your story because it's an interesting one. You've not necessarily come through the ranks of medical devices. You've worked in different markets and you've found your way to MedTech. Give us a bit of an overview and your background and how you came to be the Chief Executive Officer within Evolution Spine.
Yeah, it's a little bit different when I look at some of my peers, the people that I work alongside and the people who lead similar organizations. A lot of them have, as you say, come up through the ranks of MedTech here in Australia, be it spine or other devices. My journey's been a little bit different. So I started my career in the UK as a management consultant, working pretty much exclusively with the NHS, and spent a bunch of years doing sort of special projects with the NHS, be it deploying new treatment centres or coming up with new patient pathways, new ways of delivering care, generally solving the problem of how do we deliver a higher quality of care for less money to more people. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do all three things at once.
Sure.
And that was a great grounding. The NHS has a lot that's great about it, a lot of work to be done. So as a place to sort of cut your teeth, it was an amazing start of my career, and it really developed this passion for helping patients. Technology was always a big thing that you could sort of see that was the paradigm shift that was going to happen, and it was going to be technology, be it digital or implantable or service technology that would shift the needle and help us do those three things. Fortuitously, I had a small spell as a co-founder of a mobile payment startup, so nothing to do with health or health tech. Did that for a little while. I exited my share of that business as we did our Series A. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so of course I went and did an MBA, studied at Cambridge for a while, and then after about a decade of living in the UK, I came home to Australia, went back into consulting, again focused on healthcare and working with some big healthcare providers around Australia, as well as some other different types of organizations. But at that sort of stage of my career, I was really ready to go and do something for myself. And followed a model of entrepreneurship that was pretty popular in the US and Europe, but hadn't really been done at scale in Australia, called entrepreneurship through acquisition, which basically is what it says on the tin. You want to run a company, you don't want to start it from scratch. I'd kind of done that and wanted to sort of buy and build something in the MedTech space, raise some capital, and came across what at the time was a small business called Evolution Surgical that was a distributor of spinal products. Used the equity that I had raised to buy the assets of that company. So it was a brand new company. We bought their implants and instruments and stock, some of their IP and their brand name, changed our company into being called Evolution Surgical, and that was the start of where we are now.
Yeah, fantastic. Such an interesting road into medical devices. And you mentioned there that you had specifically targeted medical devices when you were looking to essentially acquire a business and scale it. Why MedTech? What was it about the medical device industry that you held in such high regard at that time?
So I wanted something with exposure to the healthcare space. That could have been anything as broad as a food services company into a hospital. But for me, really the nirvana of the best possible organization was technology focused. I think it's really scalable. If you think about how you can have impact, that was what really attracted me. And I didn't want a great company. I wanted a good company with lots of potential that I could then go on a journey and sort of scale and make my own. And that's what we've really done with Evolution, or we're on the pathway.
You're on the pathway, no, for sure. And again, what sort of metrics were you using at that time to determine that potential? Because again, it's a big space. Medical devices is a broad range market from spine to orthopedics. Why spine, and why evolution at that particular point in time?
Honestly, I'd love to tell you that I used all my consulting acumen and business school knowledge, but really it was opportunistic.
Okay.
I was in the market to find something that was available. Fortunately, I had some great investors who wanted to back me, some equity investors, and then the Commonwealth Bank backed us for debt.
Okay.
It was not, I have to be in spine, I have to be in orthopedics, but it absolutely fit the bill of something that I could take and transform and run with.
Fantastic. And as far as the business is concerned, I mean, look, again, 1MD and what we do day to day, we're heavily entrenched in the implant world. For many of those tuning in and listening for the first time, probably don't know too much about the spine space, may not have heard of Evolution prior to now. Can you give us, I guess, a bit of an overview as to what you do and what the business looks like?
Yep. So Evolution Surgical is a pure play spine company. We're very, very focused. We only do one thing. For context, there's different types of spine surgery. We focus on the most acute. So always non-surgical treatments are the best treatments for a patient. Then if you find yourself needing treatment, maybe you just need a little bit of your disc or some bone cut out, that doesn't require fusion. Most people have heard of spinal fusion. Where we focus is at that most acute setting. So be it a patient might have had a really bad car accident, a trauma. They might have cancer of the spine and need a resection of their tumor. They might have deformity of the spine, or they might just have such debilitating pain that one or more levels of the spine need to be fused. That's the technology that we focus on.
Okay.
And given that we only do one thing, it was always my vision that we should be able to do all of that one thing. And what I mean by that is the way I think of the spine market or any MedTech market is you can break it into three sort of segments of the value chain: designing your product, manufacturing your product, and then distributing, being the one in the operating theater. Many companies, especially in Australia, have done one segment of that really, really well. What we've done is gone and created an organization that has the ability to do all three. And if you control that value chain, that to us is what enables the rapid innovation that we're able to do.
And you mentioned earlier, obviously, as an organization, you're a distributor, but you also have manufacturing partners here locally. Can you talk to me about how the business has evolved in that regard?
So that was one of the first things I did when I set up the business was go and get our manufacturing license from the TGA. So that's called an ISO 13485 certification. And that is the quality framework that you have to adhere to in order to control your own manufacturing capabilities.
Okay.
That was a huge challenge for us, particularly in the early days. When I set up the company, we didn't have a lot of cash. I certainly didn't know what I was doing as much as I do today. But I knew that to be different, we had to control our own products. I could see the real gap in the market, and the feedback that I'd heard from surgeons was, I'd love to be able to change this aspect of my implants or my instruments. And in Australia, it kind of feels like we're a forgotten island, forgotten continent at the end of the world. And for me to try and get a change from one of the multinationals who have amazing products, but if I want to tailor it to my own style and workflow and hands, I have to speak to my rep, who speaks to their state manager, who speaks to Singapore, who speaks to America, and they say, maybe that's a great idea. We'll be able to release something for you in 2 years' time. So the only way to compete with these amazing companies with huge R&D budgets is to be able to do something different. And to us, that was being a manufacturer, controlling our own product.
Okay.
And that was always the plan for Evolution when I took it over. And it was one of the biggest first investments that we made.
Yeah. And the process itself, I can imagine, was pretty labor intensive, pretty complex as well, to be able to then achieve, that accreditation to be able to manufacture here locally. How has that transformed the business comparative to what it looks like today versus when you took the business over?
It's a completely different organization. And what's more is, for right or wrong, we decided to pursue that accreditation through the TGA. You can pursue it through other other means, other bodies that can certify you as a manufacturer. The reason I say for right or wrong is the TGA is a very high bar. They're a hard marker. And I think globally it's pretty well appreciated that if you've got a tick from the TGA, then they don't make too many mistakes.
Yeah, interesting.
So now that we've got it, it's great that our main regulator is the TGA. At the time, it was very difficult. We surrounded ourselves with as many good people as we could back then. It's a lot easier to recruit high quality talent now that we're a more established business. We used some consultants at the time who were amazing. But yeah, we also made a lot of mistakes. And now as we bring new products through that manufacturing capability that we've got and we set up doing more incremental steps based on what we've done before, what took us a long time and heaps of mistakes, say 4 years ago, we're able to do pretty quickly, pretty agile now. So like anything, it's building that organizational muscle memory. You learn as you go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like it was a pretty pivotal decision, which has, like you say, completely changed the outlook and the landscape for the business. What were the other sort of key turning points since you've come into the organization that has enabled you to grow and achieve your objectives over the last few years outside of, achieving manufacturing capability?
Look, if I look back on some of the big wins that we've got and I trace it back to how did that happen, it all comes back to the people.
Yeah.
Unsurprising to you, I'm sure, to know, but talent is the lifeblood of this industry. I often feel in the role that I'm privileged to be in a bit like the conductor of the orchestra. I actually don't make any noise myself, but if you're able to surround yourself by an excellent violinist, a brass player, some drums, and get them to all play together, that's been the difference maker. So it's all about the people. All of the wins that we've had have been from that. A lot of the best hires that we've made at all levels of the organization, not just the senior people, not just the junior people, we've come across really great individuals and we haven't necessarily had a role for them. But if you come across a really talented person and you put them in a environment that's growing really quickly, we've found more often than not always, that they will make themselves valuable and so invaluable that you actually question how you ever ran the organization without them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective, and you make it sound quite easy. But as we know, building a culture, embedding a culture, and hiring the right people is a real challenge. And any hire comes with an element of risk. It's a mitigated gamble in a way, but ultimately you never know how somebody is going to perform until they're in the role. How have you been able to build, that culture of performance? And to your point, what does your process look like internally when you are assessing talent to determine, are they going to be a good fit for Evolution Surgical, and can we see this person in our business?
Yeah, look, I won't pretend that we're perfect. We're certainly a lot better than we were. But again, it comes back to building that muscle memory, what's worked well in the past, what's still got room for improvement. I think it's probably two things. It's finding the right person and ensuring that they're a good fit with the culture.
Yeah.
You could have an extremely high-performing person, but they're not going to be a great fit for your culture, or vice versa. You can have a great culture and it's just not the right person. So I think the way that we do that is we now have a very strong view of what we do as an organization and how we're different. And we check that during the recruitment process. And you don't know fully when they're on the outside, but you have a pretty good idea of, is this person entrepreneurial? Is this someone who's going to hustle and thrive in an environment where everything's not perfect, but they've got the opportunity to make it perfect? Is this someone who wants to make stuff, or do they just want to come into the office and have a fully formed product that's ready to go? And from the outside in, if they're comfortable with that, then we bring them into the organization and we fully empower them to go and be leaders at every level of the organization. So everyone in Evolution is given a huge amount of agency, to the point that often people don't know what to do. Like, regardless of what level you're at, they'll come to you and say, well, what should I do here? And you put it back on them. Well, this is your little segment of the business. It's up to you. We've put you through a rigorous recruitment process. go and make it work. And if you can make it work 7 times out of 10, then those 3 times out of 10 that you fail are okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So long as it's not patient-centric.
Yes.
When it comes to innovation and testing, we know that every new product that we develop isn't going to win. Every single time that we're in the theaters, it has to work perfectly. But yeah, that's sort of the culture that we built.
It's a great perspective. And, spine's a complex and highly competitive market, probably one of the most competitive markets across the MedTech space. What has been your key observations around the spine space in general, and how has it changed in the time that you've come into it to what it looks like today? Have there been, major changes in that short period?
I think there have been 2 macro changes that I've observed, and then sort of how we've tried to operate in that. There's definitely market consolidation. So you've got within spine in Australia, since I've been involved in the market in 4.5 years, we've seen Zimmer Spine exit the market. Yeah. We've seen DePuy Synthes, Johnson & Johnson exit spine, collectively 2 of the biggest players. On a global level, Stryker have said they're no longer interested in spine, but they've come back in through a partnership with someone else. We've seen Globus and NuVasive, 2 of the biggest players, merge and consolidate. That's at the top end of town. At the smaller end of town, we've also got these slew of smaller distributors and innovators as well. I think it's also becoming harder to operate as a small organization as overheads and more regulatory burden. So I think wherever you are on the spectrum in spine in Australia, consolidation is a trend. The other one is sort of the general regulatory environment is becoming a lot more difficult to operate in. And not only in the sense that it's protecting patients, which we always encourage from a regulatory point of view, but also in terms of remuneration and how much harder it is to bring new innovative products to the market.
Okay.
So we're seeing high barriers to entry, higher costs to maintain your organization, as well as becoming more and more difficult through the prescribed list of medical devices to bring innovations to market. So I think if you're seeing consolidation and a more difficult industry, it just makes it harder for new players, which I still consider us to be, to enter the market, to grow and to thrive.
So what opportunities then do you foresee for an organization like yourself where there are inherent challenges? And I think the one constant with medical devices that there is consistent change, but with that obviously presents opportunity. What does that look like for you and perhaps some of your counterparts also that are playing in a similar market?
Yeah, I think you have to do something differently.
Yeah.
If you try and compete with some of those large organizations that I mentioned a moment ago head on, you're just not going to win. Their R&D budgets are much bigger than ours. Their workforce is much bigger than ours. Their collective experience is enormous. And we have a huge amount of respect for everything that they do with their products and for Australia. What we've tried to create is something different. So it is that it's that setup that I was talking about a moment ago, being able to design, control your manufacturing, and then be the one in the operating theatre, so that when something goes not quite perfectly in the theatre or an opportunity for improvement is observed, the very next day that theatre technician can go and speak to one of our engineers and we can innovate and do something very differently. So what is the opportunity for us in a market that is dominated by foreign manufactured products? It's a sovereign capability. And being able to really listen to our customers. Now, I think that all the frontline staff that we have are amazing. There's also some amazing frontline staff that work for our competitors. I think the customer service model isn't necessarily determined by always having the best people, although I think we do. It's the corporate culture that we have and the corporate agency that these people have to go and create stuff differently. If you take one of our amazing customer service people and you put them in a different organization, it's just a harder framework for them to serve their customers. So for us, the whole way that we have tried to set up the organization is to innovate and focus on our customers. And that's really the obsession that we've got as an organization, and how we've tried to differentiate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really interesting. And, the service model in areas like spine, orthopedics, it's a labor intensive pursuit. And as you say, the challenges present a constant in terms of being able to bring product to market. Perhaps the margins that certain organizations were able to charge many years ago compared to now, perhaps there's a discrepancy there when making direct comparisons. I guess taking those things into consideration, what does that look like as far as your ability to service your customers to the same extent that perhaps spine companies serviced those customers 10 or 15 years ago? And do you foresee changes coming because the market is so different to what it used to look like?
So I wasn't in spine 10 or 15 years ago, certainly not in Australia, but I've got colleagues in my organization who were, and they do talk about the glory days of spine where regulatory barriers were lower, reimbursement was higher. And I think we're at a good place right now. I don't think it's gone too far, albeit we've seen it go so far that some serious players are starting to exit the market. So you wouldn't want to see it go much further. Margin and profit isn't the most important thing to us. The way that we measure success in an organization like ours, the way that we measure our success is how many patients do we serve in a month? Because everything flows from that. If you look over a period of a quarter or a half or a year and we are serving more patients, that generally is a denomination of financial success. It's generally a denomination of how many new products that we're developing. So that's really our North Star, and that's what we focus on. Of course, profitability is important. Unfortunately, we're not a charity. We do need to have financial sustainability. But I think if you focus on the most important thing to us, which is customer service, serving patients, everything else falls out of that.
Yeah. No, I love that sentiment, Jack. And I think a lot of people that work in medical devices are very mission driven and purpose driven. That's why they work in medical devices, with very much the patient in the forefront of their mind. So no, I really like that philosophy. And you touched on products there. And again, for many of those listening in for the first time that perhaps aren't too familiar with how a distributor works versus a manufacturer. Obviously, as a distributor, yes, you manufacture here locally, but also represent lots of different brands from other areas of the world. What does that look like? And how are you able to determine what brands that you decide to represent versus those that you don't? What does that sort of decision-making process look like?
Yeah, so it was pretty important for us as an organization to, again, coming back to our customer-centric view of the organization, to be pretty well a one-stop shop for anything that a spinal surgeon would want. When I took over the business, we had some pretty great core IP, but it was not exhaustive. It's not very easy, but it's a lot easier to go and find a good product overseas and bring it in as a distributor. That's a relatively easier model versus all the work that you need to do to design a product, get the regulatory and the quality assurance around it, set up your supply chains, do the manufacturing of it, and supply it in Australia. So those two models, the sort of hybrid model that you're alluding to, it enables us for the time being to be that one-stop shop so that we do have everything in our bag that a spinal surgeon could want. But really where the innovation is coming from is the stuff that we can control, which is our own portfolio of products. And again, the way that we think of what we supply goes beyond just the product. So the product in its most simple form is what gets implanted into the patient, the implant. Arguably the least important part of the product. If you then think around it, it's the instrumentation.
Yes.
And we have a huge amount of dynamic dynamism around how we supply our instrumentation. More broadly from that is this ecosystem of enabling technology and being able to be sort of native with all the different enabling technologies that are now slewed across hospitals. But then most importantly, what ties that all together is the service model. And I think anyone who believes in Australia, in a very high GDP per capita nation, that we're just supplying a product is completely wrong. It's the theatre technicians that are there supporting the nursing staff.
Yes.
And we all know what's happening to the private hospital system in Australia. It's a really hard place to operate. And if you look at the model in Australia of how industry is so generous with enabling technology, with staffing, these are all things that supplement the health system, be it public or private. And it's great to be in a company, in a country where we can provide that support to the hospital systems as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, I obviously come from the UK and spent many years working in the NHS, as I know you did. And if you look at how companies serve hospitals and healthcare institutions there versus here in Australia, it's very, very different. Funding models are obviously very different here compared to a public healthcare system. But I remember when I first arrived in Australia, and it was quite an eye-opening experience. The surgeon expectation as to what they, demand of their reps, the clinicals that are coming in to support them, as I say, is on a level that you probably won't see in many other countries around the world. And for many people that don't work in medical devices, that's probably lost on a lot of people as well. So it's certainly an interesting conversation. And can you give us an example of a partnership or a launch with a product that's had a really big impact on the business? Is there something that stands out for you in that regard?
Oh, look, there have been many. One that I'm particularly proud of is the work that we do in rural and regional Australia.
Okay.
These are hard to serve places that are often systemically underserviced.
Yeah.
So one particular example of what I'm really proud of what we've done is in far north Queensland, in the catchment that falls into Cairns, so the very top of Australia. A couple of years ago, we didn't have a focus on rural and regional Australia. And I thought, well, what is it to be an Australian company, if not to try and service the entire population? We made a great hire. So to the point earlier, it all comes back to the people who had some experience working in far north Queensland. And he and I took a trip up there together, and we saw how the two hospitals, the public and private hospital, were resourced there. And they were doing some great surgery, and it's a huge catchment of people, but they were just so drastically under-resourced in terms of implants, instruments, enabling technologies, service support and staff. And over the last 2 years, we've really built out a partnership with the public and the private hospital, where we've been able to provision them at our cost, all of those things, so that they've got permanent implants and instruments.
That's
we've
fantastic.
placed enabling technology, and recently we've hired a permanent staff member up there, so that when a trauma case happens at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, the surgeons aren't doing it without a theatre technician. They've got someone on site to help them. So if you look at the impact that we've been able to have as a small private organization on a huge catchment of people who need spinal surgery, both elective and non-elective, I'd like to think that we've had a small part on making the patient outcomes better. So that's a pretty nice thing, and that's just one example of where we work in rural and regional Australia. It's somewhere that, from the outside in, without knowing what other organizations do, some of our competitors seem to shy away from, because it is expensive to serve. But that's kind of the mission of what we're about, and it really speaks to the values that I've tried to set up within the company.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great story, and really talks to the patient centricity of the business, and that being ultimately the North Star, and everything else will follow as a result. And I can concur. We speak to a lot of customers and clients that are looking for those regional resources to be able to sustain a level of business, and it's hard. Finding people in those areas is really, really tricky, but the demand and the need is very much there. So it sounds like you've been able to provide some great solutions to some tricky to resource locations.
Yes.
No, that's great. And if you look to the next year to 5 years, Jack, what does the future have in store for Evolution? What does the next few years have in store for you?
So we're really fortunate. In October last year, we took on a pretty significant equity investment. We weren't in the market for growth capital, but we got approached by Quadrant Private Equity, who are one of the foremost investors in Australian private businesses in the mid-market. We entertained the conversation, and one thing led to another, where the partnership seemed too good to refuse. And look, what that partnership and what that additional capital is allowing us to do is not change our course, but instead of doing one big project every
Yeah.
year for the next 5 years, we can now do 5 projects a year.
Okay.
So it hasn't changed our mission, it's accelerated it. And what that looks like in the medium term, the next 1 to 5 years, is a lot of research and development.
Okay.
So across all of our core portfolio, we are developing and will be releasing in the next 18 months replacements for everything that we have. So our entire portfolio that's doing pretty well at the moment, we're going to be replacing and upgrading, and we're really excited to launch those products, and we're developing them hand in hand with a lot of leading Australian surgeons. We want to expand our footprint here in Australia and New Zealand over the next few years, and again, do as I said before, keep on focused on supporting more patients next month than we did last month. But also thinking about what's next beyond the medium term, which is for us international markets.
Yes.
So it's very unlikely that our growth anytime soon would be outside of spine, because it's what we're good at. But as we think to take what we do to the rest of the world, that does take some time and some planning and some regulatory approvals. So that's also on the horizon for us.
Very exciting. And obviously there's some, companies that play within your market within spine that obviously have, taken decisions to go into the region, and obviously are performing well in those high growth markets. So, that certainly is something that hopefully will be on the horizon for you guys. And certainly from an R&D perspective, the work to bring great technology that's manufactured here in Australia to Australian surgeons is a pretty powerful offering. And as far as spine is concerned as well, I think enabling tech, you've touched on it, seems to be, I suppose, the next wave of change. What do you anticipate to be the key changes that will influence the spine space over the next few years?
Look, I think enabling tech is no longer the future. I think it's pretty incumbent in what everyone does, and it had the potential to be relatively disruptive, particularly to some smaller players a few years ago. I think most hospitals have a good offer in enabling tech, and most scale providers have a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that that's really the next big thing. I think it's fairly incumbent.
Yes.
I think certainly what we see in Australia is its personalization of service, be it personalized implants, be it ability to customize your instrumentation and workflow. It's anything that can make the operation that much quicker or efficient in one surgeon's hands. And that's again where we really focus a lot of our R&D programs. Okay. It's a personalized offer to different customers, because if you come up with one solution to suit everyone, actually our customers are all very, very different. There is no ideal way to perform a certain spine surgery.
Yes.
So really listening and actively listening and being able to provide solutions to personalized problems, I see that as probably the next biggest wave. And if you look what's happening in the US, which isn't always a health model that you want to emulate, but a lot of innovation does come out of there.
Yes.
It's personalized medicine and personalized technology that we really see as a pretty exciting area, and it's somewhere we're investing in a lot.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And your offering to surgeons is unique in many ways. Yes, you have the product, but then you're tying it into service, you're tying it into local manufacturing capability, that mission. How have surgeons responded since you've come into the business? And I guess you're taking a slightly different approach to how many other organizations might approach a particular
market. Right. And it's good for some and not for everyone. And we appreciate that too, right? I personally have so much respect for the multinationals. But what we are providing is choice. It's a very different way of providing the solutions to spinal surgeons. So, look, some people just love the scale of what a multinational can offer, and I completely respect that. Whereas others have said, wow, this is such a refreshing way to be supplied and to do business, to listen to us and provide a bespoke offer. So I guess the answer is it's not for everybody, but clearly it's for enough that we're growing and we're able to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were to give advice to perhaps somebody looking to step into the spine space for the first time, possibly from another area of medical devices, or even maybe somebody that's working within spine that's maybe thinking about a change, what advice would you give them if they were coming into your business for the first time?
It's a good question. Often when we're interviewing candidates, we say that Evolution, we like to do three things. We like to help people, have fun, and make some money. And generally, I think that ties in pretty well to what anyone in MedTech wants to do, right?
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, we do this industry as opposed to any other industry because we have a passion for helping people. You got to enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
And an innovator that's a bit scrappy and at work stuff out as it goes is not for everyone. So is that an environment that you're going to have fun in? Maybe, maybe not. And of course, aligning yourself with an organization that is profitable and plenty of opportunity for promotions and growth is important. So I think it's just thinking about what is it that makes you tick. That's what makes us tick. But if you're coming into it for the first time in your career, chances are that you're still going to be working in the 2060s, right? Sure. That's a long time from now, right?
Yeah.
So I think what the industry is now versus what it could be in the 2060s is a very different paradigm. At the moment, about 85% of MedTech that's used on Australian patients in Australia is imported. I'd love to see more and more people come into this industry and try and shift that dynamic so that 85% of MedTech was designed, manufactured, supplied locally, building our sovereign capabilities. So I think to answer your question directly, it's thinking about what you want over a long-term career and aligning yourself with an organization or doing it yourself. If that's what makes you tick, and just making sure that it is something that you are wanting to do for the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that alignment is absolutely key, for both parties, those coming into an organization and for the organization bringing somebody in that has to be really well, established from the get-go. As far as your own journey, obviously now in MedTech, 4.5, 5 years in, what have been your biggest lessons when you look back on the last 5 years?
Oh, there've been countless. It all comes back to people. Surround yourself with the best people. Give them agency and responsibility and trust, and beautiful things can happen. Capital is important. In the early days of Evolution, we didn't always have the war chest to do the things that we can do today. So I think, resourcing, be it human resourcing, funding, has been a big lesson. I'd love to answer that question again in another 5 years' time because I don't pretend to have it all worked out. But learning to be dynamic and making good decisions, hopefully making more good decisions than bad decisions.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's true that we learn from our mistakes along the way, and that's truly where you grow. Jack, that's probably a good place to wrap up. There's so many key insights there that I know our listeners will get value from. It sounds like you guys are in such an exciting period of growth right now, following the investment, like you say, that will just allow you to accelerate what you've been doing, but just on another level. It's clear that you've built a team that's focused around culture, and with the patient very much at the forefront of what it is that you do, and obviously very centric to the customer as well. So I think there is a lot of really key takeaways there, and we wish you ongoing success, and we can't wait to see what you guys achieve over the next 12 months and beyond. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been great chatting with you. Cheers, Jack.
Cheers.